And welcome to another episode of Life After Work, in which four guys get together and chew over many topics, sponsored by Altrincham Media and Alti Radio. With us today on the couch, virtual couch if you like, is Mr. Rodney Maxwell, resident radio Alti DJ.
I am indeed.
Also with us today is Ash. Ash is a former dentist who's turned his life to wearing very dapper shirts, and yet again has a very dapper shirt on today. Good afternoon, Ash.
Afternoon.
And then we have young Phil. Phil is a very laid-back guy, to say that he's a triathlon eventee. He's very, very fit, but looking very relaxed and casual today. Good afternoon to you, Phil.
Oh.
And then finally, but last but not least, is myself, Paul Davis, retired GMP cop living in Greece. And that completes the lineup for today's conversation, which I think is going to be actually a good conversation, because I was just saying before we came on air, we circled around TV and how I am extremely gutted that over here in Greece, I cannot get the current series of Line of Duty. I've watched all the other ones when I was in the UK, and I've been waiting for it, and it's been building up, and I can't get it, and it's really annoying. But I know you guys can get it in the UK, and you're all switched on. But yeah, so it's we were talking of TV and TV series and what's good, what's on, what's from the past.
Well, I was just berating my own memory on this but it actually has a positive side to it, because I can't remember series, even though I've watched all the Line of Duty series, that I can still go back and watch them as though I've never watched them. So I can't remember what happened in them. I know they're quite complicated, which is its excellence, really, to the twists and turns. But it's amazing how I can watch them. And it happened with many films as well, that I watched them, even though I've seen them before, I watch them again. I think I must have been a goldfish in a previous life.
Well, I'm thinking what I'm going to do is rewatch the whole series again, because by that time Netflix will probably have grabbed hold of this new season.
But by then you'll have found out that it was who did it.
Do you know? I don't even look online I keep on Google and things like that. It's got certain twist in Line of Duty, and I'm going, no, don't tell me.
You've got to avoid all spoilers. It'll get difficult though, so don't leave it too long.
I'll try not to.
It's one of those.
So what other great?
Well, I was just going to say, Line of Duty is one of those things where it almost it's taken a second watch to realize just how good it is, and what I like about it is there was a period there where you thought British TV not so good, a bit wishy-washy, a bit light, not much money spent on it, and where's the talent? And then something like that is there, and it just knocks socks off anything else that you.
Really well written. It's really well conceived.
And the characters, they grab you, and they really pull you in.
That's only because you want to be. What is he? Inspector, whatever rank he is. You just want to be Hastings, don't you?
Hastings.
H.
H.
It is. It's absolutely right what you say. BBC, ITV, Channel 4, they all become at times very lackluster. It's the same old. And the last time, I'll probably remember of another one that happened between it. But the last time I remember what's the series you can remember that you were glued to week in, week out? I mean, mine was, for me, in the 90s, I think it was, called Capital City. And it was basically about a bunch of yuppie brokers all in London and how they beat the crash or face the crash and wheeling dealing. And they all had Porsches and fancy houses. And it was a really, really good series. And they seem to do this, don't they? They seem to come up with a great series, then rest on the laurel of that really great series, and then do nothing for a couple of years.
You're right. It's the classic second album problem, though, isn't it? That you conceive an idea and you run with that idea. What do you do then? And there's such a temptation to just repeat the idea, and it becomes, maybe you get away with it second time around because there's still interest and a bit of novelty. But it soon runs out of steam then, unless you're innovating in some way. And you could level that at Line of Duty in some ways. That they use similar mechanisms, but somehow it stays fresh. It's stayed.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. Whether, as you said, Paul, it's the characters. Well, they have thought a lot about the twist. To me, the beauty of it is and no spoilers here, but it builds, doesn't it, on previous series. Now, I've never watched The Wire. I gave up after the first series, but somebody told me that Wire's like this, that as you get into further series, it's very, it works through what has been in previous series and turns some of it on its head and builds on it. So I think that's the beauty of it.
Well, the thing I've discovered in this lockdown is Netflix, really, because I've stayed away from it, and I wasn't really interested in Netflix per se, but there's just been some good TV series there, like the one that this is where my memory. He played the president, and he's the son.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland, yeah.
Designated Survivor.
Designated Survivor. And actually, I found that the TV that you like is where some of it you already get because you know about a president, you know about the White House, etc. But you might know 30% of the picture. You're not having to make all that bit up. But it's a bit like the Line of Duty. You know about police roughly, but it's the insights that they give you. But I'm really pleased the Line of Duty is doing so well, because I was worried that actually, unless it was a Netflix production, it was an American thing, that TV wasn't really going anywhere. And I think maybe the US are a little bit ahead, because I think Hollywood started realizing that they had to change their game a bit, and maybe more money got directed into TV than maybe just pure film. I don't know, but and the thing I like about it is this country is going to have to be really good at media, right? That's where it's going to be, its future is. So when you get some good British TV programs or films, it's great.
But you can see that a lot of the series which are actually quite good that you've mentioned, it's not a coincidence that they've been going for a decade. We were just talking off air about Line of Duty. You were saying that it's been going on since what did you say, 2012? And so it's quite timeless, isn't it? So I don't know if you guys were telling me about Life on Mars at the very beginning. I watched that again. I've never seen it. I completely missed it first time round.
Oh, I should go watch it.
It's brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
You have watched it now, yeah?
I've seen it all now. And you were absolutely right. The music, and they did a sequel, didn't they? Another series in
Ashes to Ashes.
Ashes to Ashes. I mean, I did not think you could improve on Life on Mars, but she was really good in it as well.
Hang on, that's controversial. You thought Ashes is Ashes was better than Life on Mars?
They're very, very.
Oh, I didn't like. For that, I've gone back to what Phil says about sort of having a good formula and trying it again so I can see. And I thought Ashes to Ashes, it was good. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a patch on Life on Mars.
No, I mean, you're right. The only part of it that I like with Ashes to Ashes is her dynamic with him. Yes. There was that tension there all the time, which was great. But I just love the Quattro. Brilliant.
I think it did build on. I'm glad they didn't do another one, because I think then it would. I think they did escape the trap of the second album, and they did do something new with it. And of course, it did have the reveal on and what it was all.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Left hanging in the first one, so there always had to be a second one.
And that's because it's got. And if you looked at old series, if you go back and you look at some of the 80s stuff and the 70s stuff, it isn't timeless. If you watch some of I'll tell you the worst thing I've seen. Terrible. When I was a child, I loved it, and I used to watch it all the time and laugh my socks off and everything. And now it's on. Some mothers do have them on Sky Go.
Oh yeah, it's some shockers.
Oh my God, what a pile of nonsense! That was pants. Personally speaking, it was terrible. Some things don't translate very well, but other things just carry on going, don't they? They're fantastic.
So what do you remember being like great telly when you were growing up? What was the thing that you were addicted to?
Oh my goodness! First of all, the Bionic Man was like
brilliant, fantastic.
Steve Austin.
But
$6 million man.
My first crush was the Bionic Woman. Lindsay Wagner.
Over Wonder Woman.
No, the Bionic Woman, Lindsay
No,
Wagner.
Wagner, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah.
She was absolutely stunning. She still is today. She's still stunning. But I used to. This is a true story. So there was me, and I think we were in primary school when that was on, and there was me and this guy who was older than me, and we never saw eye to eye. And it was a Tuesday. Now, Bionic Woman was on at 7:30 on a Tuesday. So me and this lad, we'd met in the street. We'd had an argument, and we were having it wasn't a fight, but it was like a hug and a wrestle and one locking. And somebody said, the Bionic Woman's on in 5 minutes. And we both went, I'm going to have to stop. We're going to have to go. And legged it off home to watch the Bionic Woman. Give up the fight. But I had scrapbooks and everything filled with Lindsay Wagner. Oh, I thought she was a dog.
Come on, I'm guessing you're a fan of the Dukes of Hazzard as well then. Come on, surely.
Do you know what? No. Daisy Duke, yes. But the Dukes of Hazzard.
The Dukes of Hazzard was brilliant.
I loved it.
Saturday night was phenomenal when
I
I was growing up. There was a set, it was set all the time, wasn't it? And I think it started with the Dukes of Hazzard. Must have been something in between, maybe when I was having my tea. But then it was Starsky and Hutch, two Ronnies, Parkinson that I slept through. And then I woken up to watch Match of the Day.
Yeah.
But it
alternated, didn't it? Because if you went to because I was more nerdy, more into the science fiction things. I don't know if you remember the 70s, Battlestar Galactica or Buck Rogers. You remember any of that?
Yeah, Buck Rogers, I remember, yeah.
Battlestar Galactica, yeah. Space 1999.
Oh, on Sundays. Oh, that's fantastic. Loved it.
Commander Koenig just before your Sunday lunch.
Yes. And there was that, you have to say this very carefully now, there was a shape shifter as well. So, and she was quite, stunning to look at and all that. So it's really, oh God, don't you get all nostalgic now? It's just, that was excellent TV, wasn't it?
I really liked, I really liked The Professionals.
Right? The Professionals, yes.
And it was, we talked about, I think we've talked about this before, but the cars were as much a star of the show as the guys.
I still watch that. That's on, I'm not sure which channel it is, but is it on E4 or something?
That is Capri.
See, I wasn't Capri. I wasn't the Capri. I was the XR3i or the not XR RS2000. I was Bodie's car, or Doyle's car, not Bodie's. Bodie had the XR the Capri. Yes. Doyle had the XR the RS2000. Always was an RS2000 every time.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I like the Quattro in what is it? Life on Mars. Fired up the Quattro. We were joking about that. That was fantastic. Yeah. That was really, really good.
And then there was the programs that your parents used to watch, but you kind of got hooked because it was a family occasion, like Upstairs, Downstairs. Does anyone remember?
Oh, no.
Yeah, Upstairs, my mum watched that.
Yeah,
I was spared that.
Dallas.
Yeah. It was Dallas was like a family thing, though, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we got. I remember watching Dallas, and I don't think it was by my own choice, but yeah, it seemed to be. I think that was the big thing for everybody, wasn't it? In there,
Dallas,
probably one of the biggest viewer audience figures ever.
Who shot JR? Yeah.
And remember the thing with Bobby Ewing, it all was a dream. He was in the shower and all the rest of it.
I think that's where it lost the plot, though, didn't it?
Completely lost the plot.
I mean, as kids, as teenagers, the reason you really watched it was going to be for, Pamela Ewing, wasn't it? And then it's not going to be the plot, is it? It's just going to be the.
Well, I don't know. But I watched it for the plot and the script.
You know what? Basically, this is where you were getting your inspiration from your later material for your books, wasn't it? Obviously.
But
maybe we're showing out the fact that we did actually grow up in the 70s. I think we 70s and 80s dinosaurs here. We answered in a previous episode, didn't we? But I think we might be guilty as charged on this one.
Well, no, we're just talking about classic TV programs at that time. This is what was absolutely fantastic. We did remember at this time, there's no internet, there's no Sky, there's no Facebook, there's no smartphones. You've got to play out and that sort of thing,
No,
until 1980, whatever it was, no video recorders.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
that's why I think why most of this stuff we're all associating with together, because if you watched it at the same time.
Yeah, it's like when EastEnders first aired, or something would happen on Coronation Street. Those were national things. And you remember they used to say that they had to put extra power on the grid for a tea break during something like Coronation Street, because people would go and put the kettle on at the same time, and they had to always make sure they had extra power. I mean, that wouldn't happen these days, but that's what was going on.
And it's associated with that certain era of your life. And the contrast for me would be Friends. So one of the most popular series in more recent years. But I don't think, certainly for me, it's not associated closely with a particular time in my life. And when I discuss it with somebody else, it might be a totally different time in their life, because let's face it, you have channel Friends, whatever it is, that it's constantly on. That didn't happen in the old days, did it?
Well, see, I remember Friends. I remember going out to the US in '93 to start training professionally for the first job I had, and going out to the US, it was Chicago direction, and everybody was watching Friends, and I couldn't relate to it. I during university times, I switched off from TV, I think, but the whole Friends thing, I just didn't get. Yet people were having like big Friends parties. It was, I don't know. I
didn't get it as well. It just seems too twee, basically. I didn't get that humor. It was always too convenient. It was, I don't know. I mean, but everyone.
I must admit, I do quite like it.
I love it.
Did you?
But it's that fact that it doesn't. You can't pin it to a place in time in your own life or other people's lives. Whereas, like we were saying with the other series, we were all a very similar age when we watched that. It was in formative years, etc.
But as children as well, they feel. I mean, what you were saying before about the $6 Million Man, when you're in the playground, you're pretending to be the $6 Million Man. You remember the slow motion run?
Yeah. The red tracksuit.
And his eyes. And it means his bionic eye is in play. Remember the dolls you could get?
And being jealous.
Yes.
What is that?
Remember that?
And they lifted a weight. It had a ratchet arm, and it would lift a weight.
Yeah. Were you the cool kid in the playground who had the let's call it what it is, a doll? Did you have the man doll?
Yeah, I
didn't. See, I was so jealous of the people who did.
Yeah, I didn't have the doll.
No,
so
I didn't.
What I did to make it similar, I got a lad I didn't like and drilled a hole in the back of his head.
Oh God! Oh yeah, just remember those toys. And then the Saturday evenings. No wonder. I mean, the Saturday evenings was such a classic family time, weren't they? It was amazing because you're all watching things together. I remember Saturdays used to be go to the chip shop, get a chippy dinner, bring your stuff back, and then you'd watch, like you said, Phil. There's like a menu, wasn't it? You knew the whole of your Saturday was. And then if you're really lucky, after match of the day, if your dad let you, there was a horror film on really late.
The Hammer has.
You just, oh God, I'm going to watch the double bill.
Are there certain theme tunes though that almost freak you out? So for me, there used to be a thing on ITV, and I went dee dee dee.
Tales of the Unexpected.
Yes. And it to this day, it still freaks me out.
Because they were weird little stories, weren't
isn't
they?
she? She's silhouette dancing in the flame.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
They were Roald Dahl, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it really freaked me out. That I used to, I couldn't relate to it. I never liked them. I really didn't like them.
I don't know if anyone will remember. This was definitely in the 70s, and this was a treat for Saturday night because it started at 9:00. And we were allowed to watch it. It was a series called Thriller. And it was basically different stories every week.
Yes, we used to watch that.
They were quite scary at times, but that music started off, it was
it was a bit Tales of the Unexpected-ish sort of thing, wasn't it?
It was like really. And you had your dressing gown to just in case you needed to hide, because obviously underneath the dressing gown, you're safe from anything. Nothing can get you.
Yeah, and the settee would protect you from everything, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The Daleks could never find you behind a settee, could they? No way.
Well, come on, with the Daleks, you just had to go upstairs, didn't you? Fine.
But the thing is, with Daleks, if they got into your house, in those days, carpet was that thick, they would never have ever been.
Anyway, I'd go and get my kitchen whisk and fight back.
See, I
Smash.
oh, right, see,
Yeah.
I never got Doctor Who.
No, I didn't, to be
Only
honest.
as a little kid. I grew
get-
out of it, really. I'm not a big fan these days.
And I never got Jack and Nori either, I'm ashamed to say.
Oh no, Jack and Nori's the
I
best.
like Jack and Nori.
No,
I love Jack and Nori.
I never got Jack and Nori.
What's to get, Rod? It's people reading a story.
Yeah, but that's the thing, Phil. I couldn't be bothered with it. And actually, my reading was a real issue for me early days of school. I probably should have spent more time listening to Jack and Nori. I never not that I didn't like books. I never engaged with books ever. Until even as a young child, I only ever read what was on the syllabus. And even then, I struggled with reading. I just didn't enjoy it. And I remember
It was ahead of its time, wasn't it? It was the audio book before the audio book had been invented.
It was, but I couldn't. Jack and Nori, I would never watch it. I don't know, just something that went completely over my head.
Well, there was another equivalent on ITV. Now, I don't know if you guys ever watched this. They're called Storyteller. You know, I don't know if you ever.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. I've done watch it.
I'm a storyteller, and my story must be told. And that was basically a story, obviously, but it was almost played out like a play.
Yeah,
and I used to enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's on CBeebies, isn't it?
Yes.
But do you
Still watch it, Ash?
Yeah, I watched it last week. It was really good.
Do you remember Crackerjack on a Friday night? You know,
Right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm just thinking, Crackerjack was like
I love Crackerjack.
a young version of TFI Friday, because they had pranks, they had music, they had all sorts. It was like a junior TFI Friday.
Yes, junior TFI.
Do you remember Stu Francis? Oh, I could crush a grape. You could all his little catch, and then you had right at the end. You had the quizzes, and you had to hold as much as you can in your arm.
Yes.
It piled on, and if you did, you got a cabbage or something. 3 cabbages in your arm.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that these days because the toys in those days were those big plastic things like the rebound game or Crossfire.
Yes.
Where you landed a plane on a battleship, and those things were big things.
Yeah.
Nowadays, here's a video game. Here's another video game. You'd be walking away with a massive stack.
Here's a voucher.
Yeah. Here's a voucher for
And do you remember Run Around? You remember
Run
Around Now? And you have to do you not remember that?
I might read. I was trying to think who did it. Yeah. I used to do that at work. We had 3 lifts. And unfortunately, it was one of those, we've related this in a previous episode, where people don't get what they're not old enough. They're too young. So I'd stand in front of the lifts, and if the moment took me, I'd say, "Run around now," and I'd move to the lift. And you'd get the youngsters look at you as though you were.
They think, "What the hell is he on?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I don't work anymore, really.
Does anybody remember? We seem to be nostalgic again here, but I don't care. A Junior Showtime with Bobby Bennett.
No.
It was a talent show for kids, and people like Lena Zabaroni started off on there, and that other the girl with
Opportunity Knocks type thing.
It was like an Opportunity Knocks sort of thing, but Opportunity Knocks, how great!
Huey Green. Was that Huey Green?
That was a great program.
Yeah, well, that's
lots of people in the following decade or so started out on that program.
Yeah.
My mum used to watch that, and I used to end up watching. Do you remember Golden Shot with Bob Monkhouse? And and then the gold used to come. Oh my God, there were some really good shows, weren't there then? And they used to get viewing figures that they could only dream of now. You know, like 18 million.
But Ash, I don't think that was anything to do with the quality of the program. I think it was just because there was bugger else on. You know.
True.
Yeah. So you get the point, because I was going to ask the question really: do we think actually our TV has got any better? And you can't use figures to do a like for like on it.
No, because it's a different world, isn't it?
It's so different.
Yeah.
But
what struck me about what we've just discussed is the variety of all that stuff. There was light entertainment, a bit of comedy, the more serious drama types.
And that was all in one evening. Remember, this is in one evening.
So do we still have that variety? Because now what we're mentioning, it's more the crime dramas. They seem to be the big thing, don't they? And some of it's light-hearted, but whether it's Line of Duty or Designated Survivor.
What was that thing that they used to take
Unforgotten.
people? It was like they got celebrities and they did games, and they would put them on. What was it called?
It's not the.
It's a knockout, yeah. I mean, you know,
that was brilliant.
With
Look,
Eddie
particularly the international one.
Eddie Redding.
yeah. I mean that was great. And then you would have rubbish like the Horse of the Year show, for example. You know what I mean? We did have some rubbish, you know.
But you remember the Krypton Factor at 7 o'clock as well? That was really good as well, wasn't it?
You
Like
see,
Superstars. Do you remember Superstars? When we got the seven athletes and Kevin Keegan.
Well, do you know, I was just
Jamie
about to say, the only
Thompson.
thing anybody remembers is two things people remember from Superstars. One is Kevin Keegan's hair, his bubble. And the other is how many things Brian Jacks could do, because he was always brilliant, wasn't he?
It was, yeah. It was.
That's all I remember about Superstars.
He was just like knocking them off, wasn't he? The press ups, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Easy actually.
See, I'm convinced. I'm convinced there's a link between some of the programs you were watching and what you ended up sort of being like or doing. Because I Krypton Factor to me too cerebral. I didn't get it, right? I didn't get it. And the thing you were talking about there with Kevin Keegan, I was like, well, I used to think that's just English, right? I don't get that. That's just mad. And I don't know. I couldn't engage with some of these things, you know. And then I look back and think, God, that was a bit stupid, really, you know. But Krypton Factor.
What were you into instead then?
Songs of praise, for goodness sake, on a Sunday night. Highway. And you know, no, but I didn't have the patience for something like Krypton Factor, and then you realize it was actually very, very good, you know, or Blockbusters, you know. He thinks I'm joking. That's what we were watching.
Or best guitar pub band, the competition for the best guitar pub band, is that
would have been a good one, actually. Yeah.
I apologise for the breakdown in my laughter there. Me and Ash just shared a little moment which hopefully everyone didn't get.
Oh, let's just leave it at that. But Krypton Factor was really good. I remember all the who was the guy who
Gordon
actually
Burns.
Gordon Burns.
I've interviewed him. He
Right.
was a Northern Irish news anchor back on Ulster Television, ITV equivalent.
because he was Northwest as well.
He was Northwest.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was. Yeah.
But
Was it Granada Reports?
It was Granada Reports.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he lives locally here in Ulty.
Oh, hang on. No, was he ITV or BBC, Gordon Burns?
Oh, I don't know.
He was BBC, but when I am in Northern Ireland, he started off on Ulster Television.
He might have, and he might have. I wonder whether it was the ITV in the Northwest to start off with Granada Reports, and then came back later in his career with BBC Northwest.
Don't know, but it was him, and I think he used to. Gloria Honeyford was also one of our local news presenters that, and he did a show, I think, with her. But I met him just about a year ago. I interviewed him.
He's local, isn't he, Gordon?
Yeah, he's a local man. Big United fan as well. But
But there you go.
So I find very strange about current day TV is the fact that we seem to have lost. They're going about a watershed, but for me, they seem to have lost that watershed. I think we've mentioned this before.
Yeah.
Where there's swearing, there's this going on. There's sex and there's violence and there's shootings and everything like that. Yet they take off things like. We can't go into what these were about, but do you remember things like Love Thy Neighbour? Do you remember Love Thy Neighbour?
Yeah.
About the two neighbours and the thing with Alf Garnett in.
Yeah.
You couldn't possibly show any of that nowadays. And it was...
The thing about it is, I think people missed the point with that. With Alf Garnett, it was self-deprecating. The thing about it, the jokes were always on Alf Garnett. If you looked at the other people, he thought he was always right. But it was ironic always. So you got that. I mean, there's some others which were not like that, and they were just quite horrible. Right,
Mind Your
nasty.
Language just
That
was
was
a total
terrible.
shocker on ratio and
Oh, it's just embarrassing. If you got a school, and they got all the stereotypes, Italian, Spanish. I mean, the French guy, he might as well have come in with a bloody ring of onions and a baguette. It was just ridiculous. It was just, it was just so obvious, wasn't it? Those things, they were terrible. But the others, like you say, people go, oh, look at Alf Garnett. I said, just step back, look at what the guy's trying to say, how it's directed, who are you laughing at? You'll find it's always Alf, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The character, he was he was having a double character. But this, I mean, I was having a conversation with my daughters this week about language, and again, like certain phrases that I would never have said, or certain words I'd never said in front of my parents. And it's like, those are quite all right. They're acceptable, but there's a set of words that are totally unacceptable, which probably always were anyway, and you wouldn't have used them. But
salad.
Huh?
Like salad and things like that.
Meat. But no, but this is, I guess my frustration is these things happen and you can't control them. And you can be really quite archaic quite quickly, And
that's true. And I think we may have touched on this before as well, but obviously with television censorship now, or the watershed specifically, rather, it's impossible to police now. We just said how people watch things at different times, so it's irrelevant that it's actually put on after 9:30 if more than half the people watch it on catch up.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Do you think it's important that they should try to maintain a watershed?
No, for me, no. I think the important thing for me is that you shouldn't be taken by surprise. So I'm fine with the fact that up at the beginning of every program now, it does tell you what's, and in the synopsis when you go to watch it on a catch-up, the rating and why it's rated. I think that's quite good. So it might be, there's all sorts of categories now about threat of violence, or it's very specific. Yeah. So I think that's sufficient personally, but because if you think keeping kids away from it by it being at 9:30, it's a nonsense.
Just go and work on a building site at the age of 16, and then you.
Well, yeah,
you
exactly.
Learn, and it's your choice whether you actually use that language or not. That's the thing.
So I think the important thing is it's not to shield it and pretend it's there. It's to go on to a different subject, aren't we? To educate our kids and all how to use this stuff.
Bringing up current series that I've watched of late that I recommend, and they're really good. These are on Netflix, by the way. It's like Stevie's Tea Time Tips. There's TV tips.
I think we found a new program.
Let me get my pencil.
Yeah.
Weekly TV review.
If you've not watched it and can get a chance to, because there's a new series coming in a couple of months, Ozark with Jason.
Right, yeah.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. One of those series where you keep watching it. I think there's 3 seasons out and the 4th season's on its way, or there's 4 and 5. But that brilliant Ozark. Watch that. The second one. Now this is weird. I would never have sat myself down and watched this, but me and my partner Jane, we watched this, and there's 2 seasons so far, and they're doing a 3rd, and it's called The Heist, and it's Spanish but dubbed.
Oh,
but it's absolutely brilliant. It's basically about this group of Spanish, the bank robbers, basically, and it's how they go about doing these big bank jobs. And there is a twist to it all, but it's really, really good. And once you get over they're talking, but it's not in sync with the English, it's good viewing, and that's called The Heist. And the program that I'm watching at the minute, which is it's enjoyable to watch. There's 6 seasons, and I'm in season 4 at the minute. I've done a bit of a binge, and that's called House of Cards, which is it's Kevin Spacey, yes, and he plays he starts off as a congressman and makes his way up to the American president, and it's all the seediness that goes on in politics, and so that's quite good to watch as well. House of Cards, which is also on Netflix.
Yeah.
So
good recommendations as well. I've got one. I'm not sure. Sometimes it's been on daily. Sometimes I think it's more of a weekly fictional drama series and sometimes it's quite comical and hilarious as well. I think it's currently on. I think it's called Coronavirus Briefing. you catch up with it. It's brilliant, fantastic.
Is that with that blonde-haired bloke who wants to go out for a fight and have his hair cut?
Yeah, that's the one. You've got it.
Yeah.
But is it? But is it factual or non? Is it non-fiction or fiction? How would you describe it?
I haven't worked it out yet.
It's fantasy. It's fantasy, most of it.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
So you put it in the same category as Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, that sort of thing. Right.
It's a bit like lunatics in running the asylum, isn't it? That type of program.
Yeah.
I tell you, talking of which, the series, I've just finished it yesterday. It's 8 seasons, but it's absolutely amazing. It's so addictive. It's Homeland. I've finished it now. You've got to watch
Kerry.
Oh, wow.
I'm so glad I don't work, because it's clearly a lot for me to catch up on here. I've still got, because those are classics, aren't they? House of Cards and Homeland are meant to be.
I mean, have you, Rod, have you seen all of it?
No, I haven't. I tell you, there was a period where I think Cal and I were reasonably hooked, and then it seemed to go. I struggle with some of these series when they go into a bit of a fantasy type thing. There's a point at which it doesn't seem real anymore, and it's just to extend it. And her character, which is quite a complex character, and sometimes could be a bit, you struggle to watch because she's going through a lot of pain.
Well, she's bipolar in this as well, so she suffers depression, but she uses that to actually she's very analytical but can't form a relationship. But it scratches underneath the surface of American politics.
It does.
And a lot of it is based upon information about how things work, and it is very, very, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I just watched the last episode yesterday, and what a fitting ending. It was just so clever, brilliant twist. And you know, when series end sometimes, they don't end well, do they? They just either they get forced to end quickly because they run out of money. Very rarely does anything come to a natural conclusion, and you think, you know what? That was really good. They've ended it in a really
well, usually because they go from one series too many, don't they? But like we were saying before,
or they don't get a chance to finish it,
or they're trying to leave the door open for us. But my big issue with my memory is that my recall on these things is really quite bad. So that's where I love the fact that that most of the programs will do a synopsis at the beginning, because that puts me back in the room. And with catch up, Helen and I will often binge 3 or 4 in a row, because often they're really only about 40 minutes long with commercials. But that allows me to keep some sort of thread, because my recall of going, I could tell you, I don't know, something that happened in Dallas, but I couldn't tell you Homeland. I wouldn't. I don't understand.
It is complicated. You're right.
It's really complicated, but my memory is not good on that stuff. But I just think it's really class that actually there is so much good stuff out there. And the thing I do like is I find Americans now are they're being much more critical of themselves, the country, and whatever. So it's not all dressed up and we rock type thing. Well,
to pick up on that and to bring it full circle, really, I'm going to be a bit controversial first about designated survivor, because I think that's a good example of what you're talking about there. I'm sure a lot of it is in response to the Trump presidency, where there's some crazy stuff going on in politics and in the White House.
Yes.
That's what was very good about that. I constantly saw parallels about how they were probably having to deal with Trump. And this was almost, Kiefer Sutherland's president was almost an object lesson in leadership. And it's almost as though they were saying, look, Mr. Trump, this is how you should be doing it.
That's it.
But to be controversial, I do think, I loved the first series, but I've stopped watching 2 or 3 episodes into the second, because to me, I wondered whether it had outlived its purpose and its usefulness, because the plots, it just seemed to be every week, what disaster or crisis can we give him now to deal with this week? So I got a little bit tired of that. Bring it full circle. I think one we've not mentioned is something called Bosch, which is based on some Michael Connolly detective books. And in some ways, have you seen it, Ash?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's fantastic.
I think in some ways it's a sort of American, in some ways, Line of Duty, because it's about a detective in a police department, and there's a lot of corruption goes on, and you don't know quite who's who and who's a good and baddie. And that is really well plotted, not least because, like I said, it was from these series of crime novels by Michael Connelly. So very tightly plotted.
They're very, very good plots, aren't they? That's the thing. They're quite labyrinthine, quite twisty plots, aren't they? Just when you think you've got something, you go, what? So
it winds a bit, and
it does, and he's very good. That's definitely what. I've not seen them all though, but they are very good.
Is that on Netflix?
I think that was an Amazon Prime, actually.
Right, okay.
I had a free trial. Doesn't everyone have a free trial? There's constant free trial with Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I think Netflix is quite a good service, and there's some good stuff on there. But I like the fact now that actually some of the TV is as good, if not better, than the films, and that partly that's because there are so many. There's not enough films being made, but there's so many facilities, and they've turned to TV, and they're making really good TV. And TV, in some ways, is it's replaced cinema a little bit, because people, especially in lockdown, but people don't want to. They want to sit in their own chair and watch it with their own glass of wine or whatever. So
I think whether some of the high quality of the content at the moment is because of that competition now, that they all came from different backgrounds, but they're all established as platforms, aren't they? Amazon with its Prime, Netflix, what's the other biggie? Well,
you've got Disney Plus as well.
Disney Plus, and they are all having to compete now head on with each other, and the differentiator is going to be the content.
I just think it's a shame that I think when you mentioned the fact that we've, in terms of series, they can explore things in quite decent detail, because you've got 8 episodes and then you've got several series after that. But I think what we've missed out, I've missed out on it really, is films. You mentioned that before, Rod. Go about films. I miss going to the cinema. I miss seeing a director's interpretation. He's got you for an hour and a half, 2 hours, possibly 3, and to see that's it's a brilliant skill. If you see a fantastic film, you see great acting, if you see a great plot, and it's done in 2 hours, it's done in 2.5.
That's true.
You don't have to watch 7 series of 8 episodes each or something to get. Yes, it's enjoyable, no disputing that. But I think I personally have missed film. I can't wait till the cinemas open.
Well, that new cinema that we've got in Altrincham, what's it called? Everyman. I mean, that's like, it's a really good night out, because you can have a drink in there, you can have even some food. The sound.
You watched the film?
Yeah,
it's brilliant. And couches, haven't they, and sofas and things? It's brilliant.
And the sound, everything about it is quality. The sound is good. They deliver drinks to you, and it's like adult. It's like cinema for adults, as opposed to cinema where you'd have lots of kids type thing. And it's a different way of watching it, but it's very good. You feel like you're sitting in your own settee, because there's big couches. You've got a drink, you've got a bit of food, and the sound quality and the screen is fantastic.
You've got to be careful with the phrase "cinema for adults" there, Rod. Though. Clarify what you mean again.
It's not that. The only thing I was going to say, Rod, about that is just that I hate it when people, when you think you're in your living room and you forget, and people say, shh. And I think that's a bit rude, isn't it? It's just,
But yeah, Everyman is, I think it's quite cool, because it's a night out, and there's a bar there as well, and it's a good night out, actually.
Is it?
I'll have to give that a try.
Do you know what I was just going to say? We've got a lot to squeeze in, guys. When lockdown finally lifts in June, we've got to get an evening out. We've got to go for a curry. We're going to go to the Everyman. We're going to have to watch a film, go for a few drinks, and
gig. Gig. We haven't talked about music. Gig.
Yeah, definitely. But I want to do a poll here and then ask for a question to each of you. What was your favourite film in lockdown then over the last 12 months? Can I go first? What you think about it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mine was Jojo Rabbit.
Loved it. Very good.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And not what I expected at all. The title makes you think, oh, really? What?
It's quite poignant as well, isn't it? Without
very well
spoiling
done.
it.
Extremely well done.
Jojo Rabbit.
Jojo Rabbit.
Scarlett Johansson, she was excellent in that as well. It was just very, very good.
serious and funny at the same time.
Yes.
Best film, that's difficult because I've got to be honest. Where, like Ash, I love films and I love the fact that you can sit down and it's all going to be wrapped up nicely and neatly. And that was a great film at the end of an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. With the series, it goes on and on. But I've really got into the box series of various things that I'm watching. So I can't remember the actual last. Oh, I tell you what, the last. I'll tell you what was a good film I watched recently. It was called I think it was called The Newsman, and it was with Tom Hanks. He plays a reporter.
I've heard about that. Yeah,
that's a good.
I've seen that.
Based on a true story, and it's a good film.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I've got to write these down because
I recently saw one on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it, Mank. By
I've got that saved on my list. Mank.
Brilliant. It's 3 hours. It's a long one. Fantastic dialogue. Like I said, though, I mean, with Mank, he was so witty. He was so sharp. He's the one who did the screenplay for Citizen Kane. And Orson Welles said, right, I don't want you to get a credit in this. And they agreed that he wouldn't. But in the end, he was an alcoholic and he realized he wouldn't be working again. And so he said, look, I want a credit. And Orson Welles said, oh, you said you weren't going to get a credit. And he got the credit for it. But he's just I mean, sit there with a pen and paper. The insults are amazing. You got to write them down. He said, I've got to get this one in. I've got to say, it's so clever. It's so well done. It's black and white. It's well worth watching. That's Netflix.
Yeah.
This is where you got me at disadvantage because I can't remember the last film I watched unless I'm watching something over and over and over again. I haven't got a clue.
You could go for your favourite film of all time then, Rod, if you want.
Do you know, I don't even...
That'd be a good one.
You know what? I don't know.
No, that's a tough question in itself, isn't it?
I don't think I ever engaged in film as much as I did music for some strange reason. Yeah, I don't know. Favorite film of all time. It's a bit like, I don't know. I really don't know.
No, it's a difficult one in any sort of stretch of mind, isn't it? Because there's so many good.
You don't have to have one in different genres, wouldn't you?
Well, exactly, yeah, and it's time as well, time and place, and what it means to you as well. Because sometimes it just hits a note for you at that time of your life. Sometimes, doesn't it?
I remember going to the cinema for the first time as a kid, and you had to go to Belfast to do it, and we never really went in the 70s, and it was something like Flash Gordon. And you would go up to Belfast and it would be like with my dad, and it would be like a double, but in those days there would be some educational documentary on before it and it was strange. It was Flash Gordon with a film called When the North Wind Blows. It was really weird.
With John Wayne?
No, this was just about a man walking across the North Pole with a dog. And
when did they stop doing that thing at the cinema where you had a pre-short film?
I don't know.
That's what it was when we were kids, wasn't it?
But forget a pre-short. I remember being in Newquay when I was a kid with mum and dad, and we used to go to the cinema, and we went to the cinema one night, and there were the two films on. The first film was Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and the second film was Diamonds Are Forever. Both at the same time, both thing.
Wow,
and that's classic films to watch. Two like that together.
Yeah.
So I went with my sisters to watch Grease and then Saturday Night Fever in the double header. So it is.
Cool.
I can remember it was Cumber Cinema, but yeah.
When you were 8. Right.
Yeah, probably was actually. I was pretty young, Anyway, guys, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. So that was our Stevie's TV tip special of
Stevie on Tuesday.
Yeah, Stevie. Yeah, he is here on a Tuesday. Right. Well, look, good to see you all, and we'll do it all again next week.
Have a good
See you now.
Guys. Have a good week.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Bye.